The U.S. Army is trying to develop new landmines, ones that don't harm civilians. In the early 1990s, the end of the Cold War gave rise to a global movement to rid former war zones of landmines, which were littered across at least 68 countries. President Bill Clinton became the first world leader to call for their elimination on a global scale, but when it came time to formally ban them, the United States refused. Instead, over 2 decades, the United States invested $2.9 billion in demining projects and the destruction of other conventional weapons around the world. It has also destroyed millions of its own anti-personnel landmines, a weapon deemed particularly dangerous to civilians because it is buried underground and detonates when stepped on. While much of the world has moved away from the use of landmines of all kinds, the United States Army is now developing a new line of them to replace its suite of anti-vehicle landmines from the 1980s. According to Audra Calloway, a spokeswoman at Picatinny Arsenal, which has long supervised weapons development for the service, these munitions are meant to replace the service's current inventory, which were manufactured 30 years ago. The Army's end goal is to create a munition that can be detonated remotely by a soldier, a design feature that in theory could reduce the risks that landmines pose to civilians. It could also keep the United States aligned with but still not signatory to an international treaty signed by more than 160 countries that bans the use of anti-personnel mines, but does not prohibit mines designed to destroy vehicles like tanks and armored personnel carriers. Since 2016, the Army has spent $106 million on this initiative, called the Gator Landmine Replacement Program, yet it is still in its early stages. Here's what we know so far. Some arms industry monitors are concerned about why the Army plans to manufacture new landmines, given that the United States has not relied on them in nearly 2 decades of war in Afghanistan and Iraq. This new weapon potentially acts as both an anti-personnel landmine and a cluster munition, both of which have been repudiated by the international community for their disproportionate harm to civilians, said Brian Kastner, the senior weapons advisor for Amnesty International. Instead of designing new indiscriminate weapons, the United States should be ratifying both the landmine and cluster munitions conventions and working to eliminate their use.
MW News. Please subscribe my channel. Thanks for watching.